For 7 years, I thought sacrifice was just another language of love. When Victoria stayed late at the office, I waited up for her. When she flew out for business, I kept the house running. When she needed encouragement, patience, or someone to stand behind her, I gave all of it without asking for anything back. Little by little, my own ambitions became quieter. Plans I once cared about faded into the background while her career kept expanding year after year. I told myself that was what marriage meant. We were building a life together. Her victories were supposed to be our victories. At least, that was what I believed. But recently, something had shifted, and that shift had a name. Jason Carter, Victoria's executive assistant. In the beginning, I told myself I was being unreasonable. Of course, an assistant would be involved in her calendar. Of course, he would know her meetings, her travel plans, her priorities. That was part of the job. But Jason was not just part of her schedule. He was everywhere. Every time I stopped by Victoria's office, he was there. Every corporate dinner, every private event, every planning session, every casual conversation, Jason was always close enough to answer for her. It felt less like he worked for her and more like he had become her shadow. One evening, Victoria and I attended a company fundraiser. A guest turned toward me and asked a question. Before I could answer, Jason stepped in smoothly. Victoria actually prefers the Singapore proposal. Victoria smiled at once. Exactly. I looked at her, then at him. That wasn't what I was asking, I said. I was asking about Victoria's travel schedule. Jason answered again. We'll probably leave next month. We, not she. We. That one word stayed in my mind long after the fundraiser ended. Later that night, I brought it up. Jason seems very involved lately. Victoria barely glanced up from her phone. He's efficient. That's not what I mean. She sighed, already annoyed. Ethan, not everything has some hidden meaning. You're overthinking it. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally noticing what had been happening right in front of me. Over the next few months, things became even stranger. Jason started attending meetings that had always been reserved for senior leadership. His influence inside Crosstech grew quickly. Employees began treating him like he was another executive. Sometimes, they looked more afraid of him than they did of Victoria. Then one afternoon, Victoria called me. Ethan, I need you to come to headquarters. I stood up immediately. Is everything okay? Just come. The call ended. No explanation. No warning. Just an order. A heavy knot formed in my stomach. Something was wrong. 30 minutes later, I arrived at Crosstech headquarters. The receptionist looked away when I walked in. Several employees stared at me, then quickly pretended they hadn't. As I made my way through the building, whispers followed behind me. I could feel them. I could hear them. Something was already happening. When I reached the executive floor, one of the managers approached me. Mr. Reynolds? Yes. They're waiting inside. Who is? He hesitated. The executive team? My confusion deepened as I walked toward the conference room. The large glass doors were already open. The second I stepped inside, I froze. The room was packed. Executives, managers, department heads, employees from nearly every level of the company. All of them were watching me. Victoria stood at the front of the room. Jason stood beside her. My stomach dropped. What is this? Victoria gestured to an empty chair. Please sit. I didn't move. Victoria, what's going on? Her face was completely blank. Sit down. Slowly, I took the chair. The room went silent. Victoria opened a folder, and my heart sank. Divorce papers. She slid them across the table toward me. I think we've outgrown each other. A gasp moved through the room. For a moment, I honestly thought I was dreaming. What? Victoria folded her hands in front of her, calm and polished, as if she were giving a quarterly presentation. Our marriage no longer works. You're doing this here? This is the most efficient way. The words didn't feel real. This is our marriage, Victoria. And now it's ending. Whispers began around me. Employees exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some looked shocked. Some looked ashamed. Others looked as if they had known before I did. Then I saw Jason standing quietly off to the side. He was smirking. That tiny smile told me everything. He had known. Maybe he had helped plan it. Victoria continued. Ethan, we're in different stages of life. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. So you invited an audience? She ignored the question. You've become a burden. The entire room went dead silent. Even the whispers stopped. I felt every pair of eyes shift toward me. Everyone was waiting. Waiting for anger. Waiting for begging. Waiting for humiliation. Victoria seemed to be waiting for it too. Instead, I looked down at the papers. 7 years. 7 years of marriage reduced to a performance in front of her employees. I picked up the pen. Victoria blinked. Ethan, I signed. No argument. No tears. No hesitation. The sound of the pen moving across the paper seemed to echo through the whole room. Then I pushed the documents back across the table. There. For the first time that day, Victoria looked surprised. That's all. I looked at her. What were you expecting? She opened her mouth, but no answer came out. Jason's smirk disappeared. Apparently, my reaction had not been part of their script. I stood. One executive lowered his eyes. Another looked embarrassed. A few employees actually looked sorry for me. I turned to Victoria. I hope this was worth it. Then I walked toward the door. Ethan. I stopped. For the first time, Victoria's voice sounded uncertain. But I didn't turn around. After a few seconds, I kept walking. No one tried to stop me. No one said a word. That evening, I sat alone in my house. The silence felt heavier than usual. I expected rage. Instead, I felt strangely empty. My phone stayed quiet for hours. Then, shortly after 9, it rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello. A deep voice came through. Ethan. I recognized him immediately. Chairman Robert Sterling. Founder of Crosstech. The most powerful man in the company. Mr. Sterling. We need to talk. His tone was serious. About today? About much more than today. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? Several seconds passed. Then he sighed. Ethan, it's time. I frowned. Time for what? The truth. My heartbeat quickened. What truth? Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice sounded heavier. The secret can't stay buried anymore. I gripped the phone tighter. What secret? Chairman Sterling's answer changed everything. It's time you learned who you really are. The line went quiet, and for the first time that day, I felt something stronger than heartbreak. Salt. I barely slept after that call. His final words kept repeating in my mind. It's time you learned who you really are. By 7 the next morning, I was sitting across from Robert Sterling in a private office. On the top floor of Crosstech headquarters. The office was quiet. The city skyline stretched beyond the windows. Robert looked older than usual and far more serious. He placed a thick folder on the desk between us. Ethan, what I'm about to tell you must remain confidential. I frowned. You're making it sound dangerous. In some ways, it is. My stomach tightened. Just tell me. Robert nodded slowly. Do you remember the year Crosstech almost collapsed? Of course I did. Years earlier, the company had nearly gone bankrupt. Most people in the organization avoided talking about it. Robert opened the folder. Your father saved us. I blinked. What? He arranged a critical investment when no one else would. I stared at him. My father had never mentioned that. But then again, he had never been the kind of man who wanted credit. Quiet help was exactly like him. Robert slid several documents toward me. Legal forms, trust agreements, ownership records. My confusion only deepened. What am I looking at? Robert took a breath. 35% ownership of Crosstech. I laughed once. Then I realized he wasn't joking. The laugh died immediately. What? 35%. I looked at him, then at the documents, then back at him. That doesn't make sense. It does. No, I shook my head. I don't own part of Crosstech. Robert pointed to the papers. Actually, you do. My pulse accelerated. What are you saying? When your father arranged the investment, he refused personal compensation. He asked for only one thing. What? That the ownership be placed into a protected trust for you. The office suddenly felt smaller. I stared down at the documents again. The numbers were there. 35%. My name. My authority. Everything was real. Why didn't anyone tell me? Robert smiled sadly. Because you didn't want it. I looked up. What does that mean? He leaned back in his chair. Years ago, I tried to explain all of this to you. A memory surfaced. A phone call, a suggested meeting, an appointment I never attended. At the time, I'd been focused completely on helping Victoria build her future. Robert continued, "You cared only about supporting your wife." The words hit harder than I expected. You wanted Victoria to succeed on her own. I looked away. For years, that had been true. Everything had been about her success, her dreams, her career, her future. I remembered all the dinners I ate alone, the opportunities one turned down, the projects I abandoned, the compromises, the sacrifices. Back then, I thought I was investing in our future. Now, those memories look different. Not worse, just clearer. I had been giving away pieces of myself without understanding how valuable they were. Robert interrupted my thoughts. "Are you angry?" I considered it. No, surprised. "Very." He nodded. "That's understandable." I looked back at the ownership documents. Does Victoria know? No, what about the board? Only a few members. My heartbeat quickened. Then, technically, Robert smiled. "You are the largest individual shareholder in Crosstech." The words sounded impossible. 24 hours earlier, Victoria had publicly humiliated me with divorce papers. Now I was learning I owned more of the company than anyone realized. Life can move brutally fast. Over the following weeks, I kept the ownership quiet. For now. Meanwhile, Victoria seemed happier than ever, at least on the surface. Jason almost never left her side. They went to meetings together, traveled together, and made decisions together. At times, they looked less like CEO and assistant and more like partners. One afternoon, I ran into them in the company lobby. Jason smirked the moment he saw me. "Look who showed up." Victoria barely acknowledged me. "Jason, we're late." He smiled. "Right." As I walked away, I heard him whisper something to her. Victoria laughed. The sound no longer hurt the way it once had. Mostly, it disappointed me. A few days later, I attended a financial review meeting as an observer. That was where I first truly noticed Marcus Hale, Crosstech's chief financial officer. The moment the presentation ended, Marcus spoke firmly. "I strongly advise caution." Victoria crossed her arms. "Why?" "The projections are unstable." Jason rolled his eyes. "They're ambitious." Marcus remained calm. "They're risky." Victoria shook her head. "We can't grow without taking risks." Marcus tried again. "The numbers do not support expansion at this scale." Jason laughed. "Maybe you're becoming too conservative." Several board members exchanged uneasy looks. Marcus did not back down. "My responsibility is to protect the company." Victoria closed the discussion. "The decision has been made." The meeting ended. Marcus looked frustrated. I understood why. No one had listened. A week later, another unexpected ally appeared. Sophia Bennett, one of the company's senior analysts, approached me after another meeting. "Mr. Reynolds?" "Ethan is fine." She glanced around carefully. "Can we talk privately?" Something in her voice caught my attention. A few minutes later, we were sitting in a quiet conference room. Sophia lowered her voice. "I know this may sound strange." "Go ahead." "I am worried." "About what?" "The company's finances." My attention sharpened. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then opened a folder. Reports appeared in front of me. Forecasts, budgets, cash flow analyses. Spending has increased dramatically. I studied the pages. "Victoria approved this?" Sophia nodded. "And Jason pushed for most of it." I frowned. "How serious is it?" "Serious enough that I'm talking to you." I looked at her carefully. "Why me?" She hesitated, then gave a small smile. "I know more than people think." That answer told me enough. She knew I was not just Victoria's former husband. Maybe she did not know everything, but she knew enough. As the weeks passed, I watched quietly. The more I observed, the more concerned I became. Victoria and Jason grew increasingly confident, almost reckless. They dismissed criticism, ignored warnings, and pushed aggressive expansion projects. Marcus continued raising concerns. Nobody listened. Then came the quarterly board meeting. It was the first one I attended as an owner, not as a husband. Most people did not understand the difference yet. When I entered the room, several directors greeted me politely. Victoria barely looked at me. Jason, of course, was less restrained. He leaned back in his chair and smiled. Interesting guest list today. A few people chuckled. I simply sat down. Victoria looked at the agenda. We have important matters to discuss. Jason added, hopefully everyone can keep up. Another attempt to embarrass me. I ignored it. Neither of them understood what had already changed. Neither of them knew I held enough voting power to reshape the company. Neither of them realized the balance of power had already shifted. The meeting continued for hours. Expansion plans, investments, acquisitions, risk assessments. By the end, the tension was obvious. Marcus looked concerned. Sophia looked worried. Several board members looked uncertain. Victoria looked determined. As everyone prepared to leave, Robert Sterling approached me quietly. Are you ready? For what? His expression turned serious. The vote. My stomach tightened. What vote? The one scheduled next month. I understood immediately. A major decision was coming. One big enough to divide the board. One powerful enough to change Crosstech forever. And for the first time, my vote might decide the company's future. The board meeting began at 9 sharp. By 9:15, I already knew it was going to be a disaster. Victoria stood confidently at the front of the conference room. Jason sat beside her, smiling as if he had already won. Behind them, a large screen displayed charts, projections, and expansion plans. Millions of dollars. New offices. International acquisitions. Aggressive hiring. The proposal was enormous and dangerous. Victoria clicked through the presentation. This expansion will position Crosstech as an industry leader. Several directors exchanged uncertain looks. Jason stepped forward immediately. We cannot afford to think small. I stayed silent and watched. Victoria continued. Our competitors are moving quickly. One director said, we should focus on stability first. Jason smiled. Stability is just another word for fear. The room grew uncomfortable. Another director raised a hand. What about the projected losses during the first year? Victoria answered before anyone else could. The risks are manageable. Marcus Hale cleared his throat. I disagree. Everyone turned toward him. Marcus opened a report. Our cash flow projections show serious exposure. Jason sighed dramatically. Here we go again. Marcus ignored him. If these numbers are wrong, the company could face major financial pressure. Victoria crossed her arms. You're assuming the worst-case scenario. My job is to evaluate risk. And my job is growth. The tension was impossible to miss. Daniel Moore, one of the senior directors, leaned forward. I think we need additional reviews. Jason laughed. You've had reviews. Daniel remained calm. Not enough. We've analyzed this for months. Then one more review should not be a problem. Several board members nodded. Jason's smile vanished. Victoria looked irritated. Delaying this opportunity could cost us millions. Daniel did not back down. So could approving it too quickly. The room fell silent. For the next hour, concerns kept surfacing. Debt projections, market volatility, investment exposure. Every warning received the same response. Jason dismissed it. Victoria backed him. Neither of them showed the slightest hesitation. Eventually, Chairman Sterling spoke. His voice cut cleanly through the room. I believe everyone has been heard. The discussion stopped. Robert looked around the table. Unless there are final comments, we should proceed to the vote. Victoria relaxed slightly. She clearly believed she had enough support. Jason looked even more confident. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Voting documents were distributed. Directors prepared their ballots. Then Robert stood. Before the vote begins, there is one additional matter. Confusion moved through the room. Victoria frowned. What matter? Robert looked directly at me. Ethan. Every head turned. I would like you to speak. The confusion immediately deepened. Some directors looked puzzled. Others looked curious. Victoria seemed annoyed. Jason actually laughed. What exactly is he going to contribute? No one answered him. Slowly I stood. The room became quiet. Victoria stared at me. Ethan, what is this? I met her eyes. For the first time in months, she looked uncertain. I took a breath. Before today's vote, there is information this board deserves to know. Jason rolled his eyes. This should be entertaining. I ignored him. Years ago, Comments like that might have bothered me. Not anymore. I looked around the room. My late father helped save Crosstech during one of the hardest periods in company history. Several directors exchanged glances. Most of them knew that part. Very few knew the rest. As part of that agreement, a protected ownership trust was created. Victoria frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Chairman Sterling answered for me. Everything. The room went still. I opened the folder in front of me. That trust belongs to me. Jason laughed loudly. You're serious? I nodded. Very. Victoria stared at me. What trust? I looked straight at her. The trust that holds 35% ownership of Crosstech. Silence. Absolute silence. For several seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. It felt like no one even breathed. Victoria blinked once. Then again. The color slowly drained from her face. Jason laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. That's ridiculous. Chairman Sterling nodded to the legal team. Distribute the documents. Several attorneys immediately began handing out folders. Directors opened them. Pages turned. Eyes widened. Expressions changed. The room transformed in front of me. Daniel Moore spoke first. My God. Another director looked stunned. This is legitimate. A third nodded. Everything is verified. Jason grabbed one of the folders. His confidence disappeared almost instantly. What? He flipped through the pages faster and faster. This can't be right. It is, Robert said calmly. Victoria looked at me as though she had never seen me before. You own 35%? Yes. And you've known for several weeks? The room remained frozen. The balance of power had changed instantly. Not because I made some dramatic demand. Not because I tried to take control. Simply because the truth had finally entered the room. Victoria slowly sat back. Her hands trembled slightly. For the first time since the day she handed me divorce papers, she looked genuinely shaken. Chairman Sterling addressed the board. Now that all ownership interests have been properly disclosed, we can proceed. The vote began. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. Directors who had been uncertain became cautious. Questions returned. Concerns resurfaced. The expansion plan suddenly looked far less attractive. When the final votes were counted, the result was not close. The proposal failed. Victoria stared at the numbers in disbelief. Jason looked furious. Several directors immediately requested further review. Others demanded access to financial records. Daniel Moore stood. I would like an investigation into recent approval processes. Another director nodded. So would I. A third joined in. And I want a review of spending authorizations. Jason's face tightened. This is absurd. No, Daniel replied calmly. This is responsible governance. The requests continued, one after another. Financial reviews, investment reviews, management reviews. Everything Jason had fought to avoid. Victoria finally stood. Her voice shook with anger. You planned this. She pointed directly at Robert. You betrayed me. The room became quiet again. Chairman Sterling looked disappointed. No, Victoria. Don't. His expression remained calm. The truth is not betrayal. Victoria clenched her fists. You waited until today? Because today was the appropriate time. Her anger only grew. Instead of reflecting, instead of accepting responsibility, instead of asking why so many people were worried, she blamed everyone else. The board, the chairman, the directors, even me. Jason stood beside her, whispering something into her ear. Somehow, that made everything worse. As the meeting ended, people gathered in small groups. Conversations filled the room. Questions spread quickly. Reviews were authorized. Documents were requested. Investigations began. Before leaving, Sophia Bennett approached me quietly. Her expression was serious. Mr. Reynolds? Ethan. She nodded. Ethan. What is it? Sophia glanced around, then lowered her voice. The auditors already found something. A chill went through me. What? Her face went pale. Honestly, I nodded. Sophia swallowed. I think what's hidden in those records is much worse than anyone expects. Then she walked away, leaving me standing there, wondering what the audit was about to uncover. The internal audit moved faster than anyone expected. Within days, the atmosphere inside Crosstech changed completely. Meetings became tense. Executives stopped smiling. Board members demanded reports. Lawyers seemed to appear everywhere. And every discovery looked worse than the one before it. I received regular updates from Robert Sterling, Marcus Hale, and Sophia Bennett. The deeper they looked, the more troubling everything became. One afternoon, Marcus called me. His voice sounded exhausted. "Ethan, do you have a minute?" "Of course." "We found more." I leaned back in my chair. "What kind of more?" Marcus sighed heavily. "Unauthorized spending." My stomach tightened. "How much?" "Enough to make the board extremely nervous." I closed my eyes. "What else?" "Hidden contracts." My pulse quickened. Hidden. They were never properly disclosed. I shook my head. "Anything else?" Marcus was silent for several seconds. Then he said, "Suspicious transfers." The words hung in the air. "Connected to who?" "You already know." "Jason." The answer did not surprise me anymore. Nothing about Jason surprised me. After the call, I sat quietly in my office. Months earlier, I might have struggled to believe any of this. Now it felt inevitable. Soon after, Sophia requested a private meeting. We met in a small conference room. The moment she walked in, I knew she had something important. She placed several folders on the table. I found additional evidence. I looked at the documents. What am I looking at? Project authorizations. I opened the first folder. There were signatures, approval records, expense reports, contract agreements. Sophia pointed to one section. "Notice the dates." I studied them, then frowned. "These don't match." "Exactly." She opened another file. "And neither do these." The pattern quickly became obvious. Documents had been altered. Information had been hidden. Processes had been bypassed. I looked up. How long has this been happening? Longer than anyone realized. That answer disturbed me more than I expected, because it meant this was not carelessness. It was deliberate. Meanwhile, Victoria remained in complete denial. Every warning was dismissed. Every concern was rejected. Every piece of evidence was explained away. According to Emma, things had become almost impossible at home. One evening, Emma called me. "She's not listening." I knew immediately who she meant. "What happened?" We argued again. I sighed. About Jason? About reality. Her frustration was clear. "Emma." "No, Ethan," she interrupted. I showed her reports. "And," she said, "people were manipulating the numbers." I rubbed my forehead. "What else?" I showed her employee statements, and she said they were jealous. I closed my eyes. Emma's voice softened. "I don't know how to help her anymore." Neither did I. The next week, Emma tried again. Later, she told me exactly how the conversation went. "You need to open your eyes," Emma had told her. Victoria shook her head. "You don't understand." "I understand plenty." "No, you don't." Emma crossed her arms. "Then explain it to me." Victoria answered immediately. "Jason would never betray me." Emma stared at her. "Why?" "Because he believes in me." The words felt painfully familiar. Years ago, Victoria had said something similar about me. Back when she trusted me. Back when she valued loyalty. Emma tried one last time. "What if you're wrong?" Victoria's answer came instantly. "I'm not." Unfortunately, she was. A week later, everything collapsed, and the destruction came from someone no one expected. Laura Reed, Jason's younger sister, a respected investigative journalist. One morning, her article appeared online. By lunchtime, the entire industry was talking about it. The investigation was devastating. Private communications, undisclosed meetings, financial connections, competitor negotiations, evidence after evidence after evidence. I read every word. Each page made the situation worse. Jason had not been protecting Crosstech. He had not been protecting Victoria. He had been protecting himself the entire time. That afternoon, Chairman Sterling called. "Have you seen it?" "The article?" "Yes. I just finished reading it." Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he said something simple. "It's over." For once, I agreed. The evidence was overwhelming. There was nowhere left to hide. No explanation left to give. No excuse left to make. The truth had been exposed for everyone to see. Later that evening, Emma called again. Her voice was shaking. She confronted him. I sat upright. What happened? Jason didn't deny anything. The answer stunned me. He admitted it. Basically, I listened carefully. According to Emma, Victoria stormed into Jason's office, carrying printed copies of Laura's investigation. She demanded answers. She demanded explanations. She demanded the truth. For the first time, Jason stopped pretending. What happened next? I asked. Emma took a deep breath. Then she told me. Victoria had slammed the documents onto his desk. Tell me this isn't true. Jason looked at the papers, then at her, then back at the papers, and shrugged. Just shrugged. Victoria stared at him. You lied to me. No, Jason said. You did. I told you what you wanted to hear. The difference was brutal. Emma's voice grew softer. Then Victoria asked why. I already knew I would hate the answer. Still, I needed to hear it. What did he say? Emma hesitated. Then she repeated his words. You were useful while you had power. I closed my eyes. The sentence hit like a hammer. Not because Jason had said it, because Victoria had finally understood it. All those months, all those choices, all those sacrifices she made for him had meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. Emma continued. She started crying. I said nothing. Jason didn't care. Of course he didn't. He just walked away. The image stayed in my mind. Victoria standing there alone, watching the man she had chosen over everyone else leave without even looking back. For the first time, she saw him clearly. Not as a partner, not as a supporter, not as someone who understood her, just a user, a manipulator, an opportunist. And that realization destroyed her because it forced her to face another truth. Jason was not the only thing she had lost. She had lost her marriage. She had lost her reputation. She had lost the respect of her colleagues. She had lost the trust of her family. She had lost pieces of herself. And unlike money, those things could not simply be earned back. That night, I worked late. The office was quiet. Most employees had already gone home. Around midnight, I finally returned to my house. I was tired, mentally drained. All I wanted was sleep. Then I noticed a car parked outside. My heartbeat slowed. Something felt strange. As I approached the front door, I saw someone sitting on the steps. A woman. Alone. Motionless. I stopped walking. The porch light illuminated her face. My breath caught. Victoria. Her eyes were swollen. Her makeup was ruined. Her shoulders trembled slightly. She looked nothing like the powerful executive who had handed me divorce papers in front of an audience. She looked broken. Completely broken. Slowly, she looked up. Our eyes met. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then her voice cracked. Ethan. I stood frozen. Because for the first time since all of this began, Victoria looked like someone who finally understood exactly what she had destroyed. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. She sat on the steps outside my house, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Gone was the confident CEO who could control a boardroom with a single glance. Gone was the woman who had treated our divorce like a business transaction. The person in front of me looked exhausted, defeated, and afraid. I unlocked the door. Come inside. Victoria nodded silently. A few minutes later, we sat across from each other in my living room. The silence was heavy. Not angry, not hostile, just sad. I handed her a cup of coffee. Thanks. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. For a while, neither of us knew where to begin. Finally, Victoria looked down at her hands. I ruined everything. I did not answer. There wasn't much to say. She swallowed hard. I keep replaying everything in my head. Why now? Her eyes filled with tears, because now I can finally see it. I leaned back quietly. Victoria wiped her face. I thought success would make me happy. And did it? No, the answer came immediately. For the first time in a long time, she was not hiding behind excuses. She continued. Every promotion felt good for a few weeks. Then what? I wanted more. I nodded slowly. More recognition. Yes. More praise. Yes. More validation. Victoria lowered her head. Yes. The room fell silent again. Eventually, she said, Jason gave me that. The words did not hurt anymore. Not the way they once would have. He made me feel admired. I listened. He always told me I was brilliant. She gave a bitter laugh. He always agreed with me. I understood exactly what she meant. Jason never challenged her. He never questioned her. He simply fed her ego, and she mistook that for loyalty. Victoria took a shaky breath. I thought he believed in me. What he believed in was access. The truth hung between us. She did not argue, because she knew I was right. After a long pause, she whispered something I did not expect. Success made me arrogant. I looked up. She continued. Power made me careless. The honesty surprised me. Not because it was untrue, because she was finally willing to say it. For years, she had blamed everyone else. The board, employees, investors, me. Now she was looking at herself, and she did not like what she saw. Hours passed as we talked about our marriage, our mistakes, and the people we used to be. Eventually, Victoria met my eyes. Ethan? Yes. She hesitated. Then she asked the question I had been expecting all night. Can we try again? The words stayed in the room. For one brief moment, memories returned. The woman I married, the dreams we shared, the future we once planned together. Part of me still loved those memories. Part of me always would. Then the other memories came. The conference room, the whispers, the humiliation, the divorce papers, the betrayal, the lies. I looked at Victoria carefully, and finally, I answered, no. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I hated seeing that pain, but the truth mattered more than comfort. I can't. She nodded slowly, as if she had already known. Before leaving, she stopped at the front door. I'm sorry. I know. I really am. I know. Then she walked away. And for the first time since our marriage ended, I felt something unexpected. Peace. The following week, Crosstech's board held another emergency meeting. This time, the outcome was unavoidable. Victoria was officially removed as CEO. The vote was not close. The damage had become too severe. Trust had been broken. Leadership had failed. The company needed a new direction. When the meeting ended, no one celebrated. There was nothing joyful about watching someone destroy their own future. Meanwhile, Jason's problems multiplied quickly. Investigators uncovered more evidence. Financial misconduct, contract manipulation, unauthorized dealings. The legal consequences arrived exactly as Chairman Sterling had predicted. The same man who thought he could outsmart everyone suddenly found himself alone. No influence, no protection, no allies. Everything he had manipulated others to obtain disappeared. Crosstech began rebuilding under new leadership. The process was not easy. Employees needed reassurance. Investors needed confidence. Clients needed stability. As the largest shareholder, I became deeply involved in the recovery. Board members frequently asked for my opinion. Directors requested guidance. Executives wanted support. But whenever possible, I avoided the spotlight. One afternoon, Robert laughed about it. Most people would enjoy the attention. I smiled. Most people aren't me. You could easily become the public face of this company. I don't want to. Robert nodded approvingly. I suspected as much. Gradually, the company stabilized. Projects became more disciplined. Spending became transparent. Trust slowly returned. For the first time in years, Crosstech felt healthy. Several months later, I received a message from Victoria. She wanted to meet. One final conversation. We met at a quiet cafe. The atmosphere felt different than before. Less painful, less emotional, more honest. Victoria looked healthier. Still sad, but stronger. After we talked for a while, she finally asked the question she had carried for months. Can you forgive me? I looked out the window for a moment. Then I looked back at her. The answer deserved honesty. Yes. Relief appeared on her face. Then I continued. But forgiveness is not the same as trust. The relief faded slightly. Not because she disagreed. Because she understood. I know. I nodded. And trust is something we can never get back. Victoria looked down. I understand. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled sadly. You deserve better. Maybe I did. Maybe we both did. But some lessons arrived too late. When we finally parted, there was no anger. No bitterness. No resentment. Only acceptance. Weeks later, I stood outside Crosstech headquarters. The same building where Victoria had humiliated me. The same building where I learned the truth about my ownership. The same building where everything changed. Chairman Sterling joined me near the entrance. For a while, we simply watched employees come and go. Then he spoke. You learned something valuable from all of this. I smiled slightly. Probably several things. Robert nodded. Then he said something I never forgot. Power doesn't reveal character. I looked at him. It reveals what was already there. The words settled deep in my mind. Victoria's power had revealed her flaws. Jason's ambition had revealed his greed. And my own pain had revealed something important too. I did not need revenge. I did not need humiliation. I did not need anyone to suffer. The truth had handled everything. As I stood there looking at the company one final time, I realized my greatest victory was never exposing Victoria. It was not becoming the largest shareholder. It was not watching Jason lose everything. My greatest victory was surviving betrayal without becoming bitter, without becoming cruel, without becoming like the people who hurt me. I turned away from the building and started walking. My future was waiting ahead, and for the first time in a very long time, I walked toward it completely free.